Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hash Rate. My name is Mark Jeffrey. My guest today is Sal Vivona of Commune.ai. Hello, Sal. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. So I've done two shows on Bittensor recently, and they both were very popular shows. And I recently ran into CommuneAI, and it was pitched to me as a fast follower or fast fork of Bittensor. And it, like Bittensor, it's this open AI kind of thing, not OpenAI, the company, but an actual open AI that's sort of community produced, attached to a blockchain, where basically the AI, if you produce great AI, you are getting rewarded in emissions effectively. And in the back of my mind, once I saw the great success of Bittensor and DAO, I was like, there's going to be other attempts at this and other, maybe even better modifications to it. So I don't know if I have this right or not. I mean, Commune.ai is your project. So in your own words, tell us, what is Commune.ai?
Yeah, so simply, we're just trying to connect everything. And that essentially is meant to be like, I guess it's a double-edged sword because it's very versatile, but it's also ambiguous into what that everything is. So basically, when I was working at Bittensor, they were doing very specific applications. Like at the time, it was language models, and so like when I joined, I was really into this like general network where you can upload anything you create, and then anyone can use it. And I felt that like it wasn't really going in that direction, and so like I thought the best option was to essentially create our own protocol, which is it's why Substrate. I'm not sure if you know about Polkadot, but the reason why Gavin Wood made Substrate was because hey, like we want people to build their own blockchains because it gives them custom logic, and that's what Bittensor built off. They forked the Substrate code, and when I did the same thing because I wanted to make it a more flexible and like less costly, because right now it costs, for instance, like, or that's not, it doesn't cost, but you have to lock like, let's say $1 million worth of tau to create a subnet. At least right now, that might go down. But for us, it's like literally 20 commune, which is like a few $100s. So it's
right. So let me just back up so people understand what you just said. For those who might not know. So in the Bittensor universe, it all runs on subnets, and there's like 30 something odd subnets, and that's it. And people are competing for those slots. And if you get one, then you can get tau rewards, but it's limited only to those 32 subnets. So they're going to expand it later, but for right now, that's what it is. You wanted to do something, and also it costs $1 million of tau, as you said. I think it's more than that now. I think it's more like 2 million at this point. You have to stake it to even to try to compete for one of those subnets. And Commune.ai, you saw the subnet construction as a problem, too prohibitive, so you decided to allow anyone to create any number of modules, and it costs quite a bit less in order for someone to register with your system, right?
Yes. Well, initially I wanted to make it free. That was the whole goal. I wanted this to be an actual open system. Unfortunately, when you associate emissions with registration, people like when you register what you made onto the network, people can they'll treat it like free, right? So it's like they're going to abuse that. And so that was something I'm still like kind of playing with. We have burn mechanisms where you have to burn tokens to register. Like right now it's 20 tokens we've set to. And we also have another burn mechanism we haven't activated, but we essentially wanted to test and flex all these different parameters that we have that are, some are very similar to Bittensor, and then some aren't. But the whole point of this is to create a parallel chain that is competing with Bittensor on the protocol level. Because if that wasn't the case, I would be constrained. Let's say for me to want to build something new, I'd have to constrain myself to Bittensor's tokenomics. And so I was concerned that given this constraint, it wasn't really flexible for what I wanted to build, and probably for what future people want to build too. Unless you had like millions of dollars worth of tap, right? It's like,
Right.
it's just like, so I was like, okay, I was just playing opportunity cost in my mind. And I didn't really want to create a blockchain. I was building Commune as like an off-chain protocol. And Commune is like started off as an off-chain, like it's completely like, you're connecting with people like without a blockchain. So I can like with Bittensor, it's an on-chain protocol. There's an incentive mechanism that essentially underpins that whole protocol, human consensus, right? And so when I was playing with Bittensor's code, a lot of the stuff are fully on chain. You require the chain or the testnet to essentially play with. Whereas I'm like, oh well, like you can, if you want our tokens, sure, you can have the testnet, but we can do this without a blockchain either, and like we can have Web 2 or like off-chain networks or off-chain subnets that can later form as L2 solutions, where in this case one slot on the network, instead of it being a subnet, can represent an off-chain subnet of like modules. So these actually like these are a bit, in my opinion, they're a bit like.
So wait, let me just stop you there because I'm still a little bit unclear. I think I know some of the answers to this because I've read your documents. So you're building something very different from Bittensor. It's any number of modules, what someone might call a subnet, but it's any number of modules. And all of these modules are little bit routines or little modules of programming, which have the composability of, say, DeFi protocols, where they're like Lego bricks that can stack together. And you basically made an interoperability protocol, almost like API to API for any of these modules. And that's really the goal here, right? Like not even necessarily AI, it's any sort of programmable thing. Is that correct?
Yes. And which is why with their main like network is like the whole goal is like you upload anything you want, and then as a user, I can connect based on the name of it, I connect to it. And that's kind of it. And like it could be whatever
the name of it. So you have like a domain space basically?
Yeah, so it's a namespace. So if I upload an OpenAI module, it's going to be called model.openai, or you can call it a different name if you want. Now, people might find a hard time finding it if it's called a different name, but you have that liberty to do that. And the point of this is for giving that people the liberty. And I understand it's very chaotic right now, but I guess what we're trying to do is we're trying to find a good balance of like, okay, well, we have the ultimate flexibility. Now, I think we're striving for a bit of stability. So we might be using a bit more subnet. We have subnets at our disposal, but we haven't been utilizing them fully because we were really focusing on a main network of just like a general, like, network of like of modules where you can like connect and like and drag and drop and stuff, and like and that's kind of like the goal we're trying to strive for. And I think that subnets are good like they're good and bad. They're good in that they provide like a specific container of like, okay, every module is going to do this one thing. Let's validate whether it's doing that. That's great. I think if that's your application, probably good to do a subnet. Now, if you want to do anything you want, then, when let's say if I'm going on Bittensor, I'm not really creating something new. I have to follow one of the 32 protocols of how I build something. And so I'm already constrained that way. And I also have to understand, okay, well, how are they scoring? That's fine. But that was my main concern. Like, I feel like the future of AI will be less protocol specific, and it'll be like you upload anything you want to the network, and then, AI.
So like a subroutine, a chapter to a book instead of a full book, I think is sort of might be the analogy.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, like, I guess it's like, I've been thinking about this a lot because I've included subnets in the chain. Like I was debating whether to include it, but I'm like, okay, maybe I'll need this. But the goal, like, I think for us our main differentiator is the fact that we're more flexible protocol.
Yeah.
But with that comes its disadvantages, which a lot of people are confused.
They're not complete things. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, and then a lot of things might not be even working, and we're still figuring out, okay, human consensus only works for validating a specific thing. Now, if you have many different things on that subnet, your consensus the thing that goes from 0 to 100 will be very low, and then it's going to be like, it's going to be more of a Wild West.
It's too, yeah, right. I get it
Yeah.
because you're so modular. Coming to any sort of consensus on whether a specific module is useful or not,
Yes.
there's going to be a giant. It's far more granular, so you'll have far fewer validators, and the specificity of what they're testing will also be highly fragmented. So it's a lot more of a problem in your universe. Yes.
Yes, yeah. So we were thinking of doing some things. I'm even thinking about that now. I'm like, okay, I have a bunch of validators, and like some of them are like just like not working as expected. So I'm like, there's a question of like, should I stake them on like I'm reorganizing a lot of like the way I'm doing it, like because Bittensor, I think they have on one validator like all their tokens, or a lot of tokens, and so like I think maybe. For me, I was like, okay, let's create a bunch of different validators. And so I'm thinking of like having a different, like maybe having one network, and then each validator will be its own kind of problem. So if I'm like a person or a company that wants to solve a problem, I create a validator that creates a score function of like, oh, given this module, like the input of this module, which could be like any module in the network, it has to like, add 2 numbers. Or something, right? And so you're kind of just searching the network for the module that can do that. And so initially it's like, these validators are very non-intelligent. Like you need to like build them, but eventually you're just going to have an AI that just searches through like the best one for your specific need. And like this whole idea of like validators, I think will be like partially needed, but I don't think they'll be needed for a very long time, like in the future when things become smart.
Well, so how does in your universe you have this CommuneAI token, and it's in like Bittensor, you stake it with, I believe, a validator. I'm not quite sure if that's correct or not, but I own some tokens and I do have the wallet and I have staked, right? So if I stake, so I'm staking and I'm earning CommuneAI tokens as a result of staking. I think because I backed the validator. I'm sorry, I don't remember offhand. Yeah. So it works exactly the same way as Bittensor in that respect. Is that correct?
Yes. I believe that it's very similar. It's probably that's like, that's probably the same. Where it's like if I have a token, and if I'm not registered on the network, then I can stake my tokens onto a validator. Bittensor calls it delegating my tokens to a validator.
Yes.
And so for me, I wanted it to be like, okay, well, like, like I think it's a similar kind of style where it's like you stake your tokens into a validator based on the tokens you have on that validator, you get a certain reward from the validator's emissions. And so so that's the same part.
It's like sponsoring a miner. It's like if you were in the Bitcoin universe, if you could take some of your Bitcoin and stake it with a Bitcoin miner, you would earn some percentage of whatever they mine, right? Like that's sort of what it's like.
Essentially, yeah. No, essentially that's what it's like, and so now the question is, we're like, because I'm not trying to like I want to move away from this kind of like subnets kind of thing. I want to go more into an individual economy, and then subnets being for a specific use case of like replicating many things, like to do one thing. Like,
you've mentioned that you have subnets and modules. Do you have both, or are you using those terms interchangeably? You're not. So there are 2 classes of things. Okay.
So the way Bittensor is designed is like they have validators and miners, and then those validators or miners are then like on like each of these subnets. And so I guess the way I like to define it, the way I defined it was, okay, everything on the network can vote right now. So everything is a module in a way. Now the modules can become like a validator, and they can become like but I'm not giving them, like, I don't want to give them that assignment or role, like, because I think that would constrain like the idea space or the paradigm in which you're thinking of like, oh, like this has to be validator and miner relationship. No, it doesn't have to be like that. There could be many different types of interactions with these like agents, because I think the validator miner interaction is a simple interaction that is a valid one. I think that's important, and it can expand to many things, but it's not the only one. And so I think the idea of a module is supposed to actually represent, like, the module can be a validator and miner setup. It can be a whole protocol, like a whole network. And it can, like, I essentially built like Commune, like I deployed that through modules. So it's like, so you could define, like, I guess my whole like belief system was like, if I can, like, I'm a physics person, so like I tried to find the most foundational kind of like thing of like what we're building, whether it's
atomic. You're looking for the atom, and then you don't want to constrain the atom into what kind of molecules can be created. Whereas you view Bittensor as like there can only be carbon molecules and hydrogen molecules, and that's it.
Yeah,
you're like we want the full chemistry range to be able to appear. That's kind of how you're approaching it.
It's fine. I think it's fine that they have that that approach. Like I was pushing when I was working there, I was pushing for users to create their own stuff, and Bittensor was, I think, trying to do permission. Like a lot of it was permission. Like I think they had one subnet or one network at the time, and I guess I was trying to like make Bittensor, but like instead of like uploading a text thing, I'm like, oh, you can do, it's like Hugging Face, or not even like Hugging Face. Like Hugging Face is still kind of constrained. It's kind of like you can connect Hugging Face with Bittensor with OpenAI. Like it's like you're connecting all these things into one ecosystem. So think of like a market aggregator of like AI assets. That's essentially what Commune is, at least in the AI world. But you can apply, because a module is so flexible, you can apply that to any kind of like market. So
yeah, so even though it's called CommuneAI, you're not necessarily just AI.
Yeah, well, initially we were called Com, but someone I think listed that before us. So like, it was supposed to be just Commune, like ideally, but
okay,
like people.
So I was like, you're talking like it's everything, but it says AI on the wrapper.
Yeah,
so somebody thought it was AI, right? So I was like, well, is it or isn't it?
Well, we started as a collective hedge fund in like 2020, 2019. This was like right after I quit my job. And we wanted to.
Which job was that? You were working for? Was it Bittensor you were working at?
No. This was before. This was like before I heard of Bittensor. This was like I was living in like San Francisco. We were working at a startup called DocAI, which I was basically responsible for predicting heart disease in like patients given insurance records. And so like. It was kind of a cool problem, but, I realized, like we were building pipelines we're trying to like make this like understandable for doctors. So like I kind of saw the whole pipeline, and then I realized, oh shit, like we can also like make everything kind of like atomic. But the problem there, I knew it was a hard problem, because if you like, if you have to make something simple, but also complex and versatile. And so like, that's kind of what I was striving for the past 3 years, is like basically creating the most simple framework, but something that's also flexible. And funny enough, you're right. Like we already have those frameworks. It's like, Python, we have these coding languages. And so like you would think like, why do we need new protocols? Because
aren't there already APIs? I mean, I guess you've created like a universal API of some sort, right? I guess you need that layer, right?
Yeah. It's like a universal API. Like I used to mine a few hundred like miners a day on like Bittensor, just like using like Commune. So I would do that by essentially having a controller module that would then like monitor like those few hundred like models that would be scattered across different computers. So like it takes that configuration. Like that's one configuration. But I've done like probably like so many configurations over the past few years that I took out all of like the stuff I didn't reuse, and I just kept the stuff that I was reusing. And so now I think it's just packaging that up, because I do think that there's a lot of code and there's a lot of confusion, understandably, of like, people not really knowing where to start. And so like kind of like what we want to do is like have the validators kind of like constantly like running, like let's say I want their score function to be very apparent. So like when you go to when you search for validators, you're like each validator is going to have stake on it, and who it's voting for, and you can know what is like, you can see the code of that validator and the score of that validator, and so I think that transparency is important, because you want people to then like see, what do I need to build to like please, right? and that's kind of what the subnets are. Now, ideally, like for like I think like it should be like, so what I want to do and what we've been doing is that you deploy value on the network and it just searches the network, and you basically give like what's like, what kind of like keywords do you want to search for? What functions can it have? Like, does it need like this function? And like, and so that's more for coders, honestly. Like, I'm not sure users will have too much knowledge there, but a user too can like, eventually will have like, you can just search by the name, right? So it's like if someone deploys a website and that's a module, then like, on our future, like on our dashboard or on our like website we're like releasing, you can like just type in the name and then it'll find like that experience. And this won't just be with Commune. This would be like in Hugging Face. This would be like Bittensor subnet, like, module. Like, it's just
right.
Like,
so I could be a Bittensor subnet and a CommuneAI module at the same time.
Yes.
And double dip in both universes.
Exactly. Right?
That is possible. Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought.
That's what we're designing. That's what we're striving.
In fact, I could be OpenAI itself and double dip in both in Bittensor and Commune. Right.
They probably can. They honestly probably can. And like, and so, well, like, if, and also I think it's important, like people also kind of make fun of that. Right now, a lot of our modules are like OpenAI endpoints.
Sure, of course, that makes sense.
Okay. But let's say, okay, I'm going to concede that that's like, that's a probable statement. But I'll also say that if OpenAI is worth $40 billion and if we have like 1,000 of their API keys, then we've essentially captured all of their future value, that whatever they produce, like they can't censor all of our API keys because they're scattered across the network. So it's like, we basically just created a Tor. That's just one application. But like, it's like, we don't have to compete with OpenAI anymore because like
let's talk about that for just a second, because there is a thought that I've had that I want to run by you. And it actually applies to Bittensor as well. Yep. So if you're one of the big AI players, like, your Gemini, who had a terrible week this week, right? So Gemini, which is Google's AI, OpenAI, or any of these other big AI companies, there's a finite amount of GPU even available on Earth, right? So in the Amazon cloud and whatever clouds are available. And so in a certain sense, it's about even having a reservation at the inn. It's not even about price. There's just no more room, right? The GPU is already sold, right? So as a little module or a little AI or a truly open AI, not OpenAI the company, you don't even have a shot at getting that GPU. So how is it possible for little AI to compete and win against these big AI players that have all that GPU? Does that matter, or am I thinking of it right?
Yeah. No. So we're not trying to. So I guess. Yeah. I think that's a fair statement. So we're not trying to create a new OpenAI. We are trying to create a marketplace of initially digital assets, and in this case, right now it's APIs. And so so we're not focusing too much energy. Like, we have GPUs. We're going to use a lot of our GPUs for fine tuning and for like mining other currencies. But like, I think what I like to think of, no matter I'm not trying to outcompete these really, really smart, like thousands of smart developers creating new stuff. Like, I think it's a waste of time training a new model, unless you really have a specific plan as to why, like, your model might be not outcompeted in the next like few days when someone releases something. Like, it's like I figured that the best, like I was just thinking, like, what's the product going to be in like 100 years from now? It's probably going to be like, it's a wild thought. It's probably going to be just a bunch of agents talking to each other over an open network, by their name. They're like, if I'm going to call Bob, I'm not going to see what subnet Bob's on. I'm just going to know Bob's.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I get it. There's a namespace. You can just search and address them directly. So there's not 30 some odd subnets. It's like the internet where there's like a million flowers blooming all at once and they all know how to talk to each other.
Yeah. So to address your question, how do we compete? So like, even if we can't like build a better model than OpenAI, like, we have access to it through just like the network of people that are willing to connect to it. And now the problem is like, okay, how do we assign value to that in real time? Because like, the way Bittensor does it is it's very manual. It's like, when a subnet creator is coming on, it's kind of like there's an under the deal kind of table. It's like, hey, I'm going to stake this on you, and then you build this. You're a company, we want you to get there, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit inside baseball. I've noticed that as well.
It is, yeah, but that's fine. I don't know. I kind of don't like it, but it's like, hey, it's the way. I think that's the liberty of the like when you're building a company. I guess you have the liberty to do that, and I don't think that's a bad move to get institutional players in. My concern, though, is that I don't think this is gonna. If we do this, we're gonna kind of do the same thing we did to the internet when we brought in all these it's kind of like, you remember when like the internet was like, kind of like what Bitcoin is now, or like, well, I guess when Bitcoin was like maybe before the 2017, kind of like more cyberpunky. Like, I feel like
sure.
if we go down that road, like there's many cases where we've done that and we've kind of tripped in like bringing in like corporate interest. But
things get gentrified and yeah. I mean, they get better and they get worse at the same time, right? So there's some good things about bringing in the big corporate interests. It's not all horrific and terrible. There's some great things that come out of that also, but also some of the purity and some of the fairness gets squashed along the way. That's also true. So it's both at once. That's what I've seen.
Yeah, man. No, honestly, like I'm still dealing with it too, man. Because like I'm like, do we take like I'm a capitalist or libertarian, really. I believe in free will. I guess where I have like issues with capitalism, or just in general, I have issues with like totalitarianism, where people will like be selfish and then like take lots of like of resources, whether it's like a king or like whatnot. And I just see that time and time again, especially in like these crypto spaces where it's like I don't know, it's weird, man. It's a weird vibe. It's like
so you're a libertarian, but you've invented digital communism.
Well, no, it's actually libertarianism. It's
libertarian. I just think it's funny.
High inflation with a Bitcoin inflation curve. Yeah.
So I get that. So let's just say I do a module, right, on Commune, whatever it is, and so I put it up. I stake $200 or whatever worth of Commune to get it up and running. How do I then find validators? Do they find me? What if nobody ever validates me? How does that work?
Yeah, so there's different like types of validators. There's like validators that check whether you're public. So it'll just ping you regardless of what your name is or like what function you have. You're going to have a default function called an info function. Like it's an info
Yeah,
function.
So it'll find me in like the centralized direction. I'll be like, oh, there's a new thing up. Let's go have a look at it.
Yeah. So initially it's pretty dumb. It's like they're kind of like just like they're just scattering the network. They're trying to find who's online. Because I wanted like more flexibility in people. But then the issue there is if you don't have like proper validators, then you can be incentivizing like just shitty stuff, and like people might not even run it. And
right. So, but how do I even get a validator? Right. You're right. They could be shitty validators, but I think that because your network is so open and so flexible that even getting like the advantage to Bittensor is there's only 33. Right. So it's very monolithic and dopey and kind of like AOL or CompuServe, but that's also why it works. Right. At least in the early days. Right. It's a mainframe. It does have that kind of crunchy rigidity that like a mainframe has. Right. Whereas you're like everything and everybody all the time. Right. Which is great. And I like that. But it's also a lot more chaotic. Right. So like if there's an Achilles heel here, it's that there's not enough focus in the early days to start a fire. Right. And that's actually my fear for you. So I'm trying to like figure out why I'm wrong. Right. So how am I wrong? How do validators find me? And I guess your answer is there's like a centralized phone book that they're all kind of watching to check things out to see if they're interested in validating it. Is that basically right?
Yeah. Essentially, they're just like basically when I start a validator, I have like the phone book, and then I basically like say, oh, I want to call everyone with this function. And then like, if you have that function, then, it calls successfully and it doesn't error out, then you get a point. and you can score like, basically like, I want to kind of distill it down to people just defining a score function, like kind of like a smart contract, but you then like it then searches through like the whole like, you know, swarm to find like the best matches. And like most applications don't need like, I don't know, like 30 modules, right? Like it probably needs one or two, right? So if you're finding something in storage and you're like, okay, like I'm giving all the modules that are storage related, and it's going to find everything that's like storage related to you. And so like initially, like ultimately what I'm striving for is for the validators to each have their own page, and for you to have like to search for them. And then like you would open one up and then it would like kind of say, oh, this one has like 100,000 comms staked on it. What the hell is it like voting for? Oh, it's like, it says it's like, you know, storage or something. Okay, I need this. All right, let me just like, you know, make this and deploy it to the network. And so that's one way if we do the general network. So we could also go like, so when I designed Commune initially, the initial plan, and, you know, maybe this was a bit of a mistake of not pursuing it early on, but like, you know, we had like subnets from the start. I just didn't really want to like, I didn't really envision it that way. I wanted like it to be like this smart contract kind of like vibe.
Yeah. You wanted the composability of DeFi.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And so I didn't really, yeah. So it was like, to me, but like, I'm like, okay, like, sure. Like we can try it eventually. And honestly, like, you know, I think this was in May, and we let, like, the way we designed it was like, oh, like, when you register a module, if like, you know, you have to specify the name of the smart or of the subnet. So by default, it's like commune. But if you choose a different name, like storage, then it searches for, okay, is there a storage subnet? Okay, no. Okay, do you have more than like, you know, the least stake subnet? If you do, then it creates a new one. And it does all that logic like in real time, like just as you register. So basically, like, we're going to have like, I'm going to be probably doing more subnet stuff. And then we're going to be having like the ability for modules to swap between or teleport between subnets. So like it basically gives that more flexibility where like, you know, I can like, you know, change instead of like deregistering and registering again, I can like basically like hop over. And you can have a module that registers on multiple subnets at once because it's symmetrical. Right. So in that, for those reasons, I think it's like, it's a bit more reflex. Like it's similar to Tau in like that sense, like the incentive layer, but I would say it's a more like smart contract vibe.
Yeah, your main gripe, so to speak, with Bittensor and Tau is its rigidness and inflexibility, and that is you basically said it doesn't need to be that way. Everything can be modular. You're sort of like the Celestia of this, blockchain AI world, if you will. Celestia being the very modular blockchain, right, as opposed to the very monolithic blockchains like Phantom is now with Sonic. And or Solana, of course, is the big super monolithic one, right? So, and Celestia is like the opposite of that vision. It feels very much like that dichotomy once again within the sort of AI meets blockchain space. So you are the Celestia fighter in the ring, if you will, in that universe.
We could be both, because we have some.
Of course, you can be, because flexibility is your thing.
I think, because I'm. This is always like a philosophical question. So I'm like, okay, should I create, like, I have some that's running right now, but I'm like, I think it would be good to try to see, like, if we can compartmentalize certain modules. So like storage, I can see a storage subnet, being like useful, because you don't really need custom storage, like mod, like, you know, it's like, it's just like a storage.
It's dopey. So, yeah. It's like Filecoin. So Filecoin can be implemented on your network, just like it has been on Bittensor. So there's no reason why that can't happen. Or Render. That's another one that could be implemented using your architecture, correct?
Yeah. And it's essentially, and like, we're probably, we actually have some people, we have a team that's mining on Bittensor 2, and we're actually going to convert all those like subnets into like a module for people to just like call across. So you can like, or we might even like create, because we have 256 like subnet like slots, we could even like reserve like 32 of those for like cheaper Bittensor versions of what they're building, because like it takes like probably a few $100s of like person work to like convert a a subnet into like a module, like a few hours. So like, I was thinking like we're doing that like, and it's not really a priority, but it's like for me, it's like none of this kind of like, this is all like kind of the back end, like the underground stuff. What I think is something that's really important for like, let's say virality would be the interface.
So I was just going to go there next. So yes, so we've been talking a lot about very esoteric stuff, and that's great. But we're past the half-hour mark, so I want to get into one of the big gripes I have with Bittensor, and I've said this 2 times on both of the last 2 Tao shows. There's no front door. There is no. I don't know what people are using it for. Like OpenAI, whatever's wrong with it, OpenAI and Gemini, formerly Bard. I know where the front door is. I know what people are doing with it. It is a useful consumer product, right? It's very obvious what it's doing, and you can like it or not like it, but you know what the URL is, you know what it does. With Bittensor, it's like, well, we're doing OpenAI, but like, where is it? How can I use it? How many consumers are using it, right? Mm-hmm. And their entire reward structure is based around staking to make more Tau, kind of like a little bit like Olympic Tau. It's arguably more, right? So there's a little bit of that going on, right? So that scares me, and that's the one thing that actually kind of terrifies me about it. Is it's rewarding. It's very insular, right? It's rewarding people who are making AI and testing AI. But what if nobody ever uses that very well tested and very well thought out AI? It's like the greatest piece of art ever, but nobody ever comes to see it, right? You hang up you make the Mona Lisa, but nobody ever views it, right? And it doesn't reward for product market fit, right? There is no evolution that occurs because a consumer is using it. That bothers me a lot with the Bittensor Tau world. They say they're going to fix that. What do you say to that? Have you already fixed that, or is that something you're not solving for? Are you concerned about this at all, or what do you think of that?
I'm concerned about that. No. I'm not a crypto person by heart. Like I do think that there's a weird game you're playing in the crypto world of like Ponzonomics and actual utility. And if you play too hard on the Ponzonomics with no utility, you have to be lucky that you're like a meme coin, like to like be the wave, because like the whole existence of your price is that a lot of the reason why people buy Tau and Commune is not like, they're not saying, hey, I'm going to buy it to use this. No, it's, I'm going to buy it because I think it's going to go like 10x or 100x. And that's a blessing, because it it can fund cool projects based on community-based projects. Like we didn't go through a VC. So this is all community funded, but it's a curse because I think it also doesn't push these blockchains to find like clients. And I'm not saying Bitcoin's not doing that. I think they are. But I think just the incentive mechanism of crypto in general is essentially like, it doesn't need to be profitable long term. It just needs to have like buy pressure and sell pressure stable over that course of time. And so right now, I think because we're both like not even past our first halving. So we're in a very high inflation period. And so like I would say, like I'm very I'm obviously, I try not to get too stressed about this, because it's like I'm really like accelerating, trying to like, okay, I'm just striving for utility, right? Like I don't care if something's running on AWS, I just want to connect it. And so I think creating an incentive layer on like a modular level can connect different things. And it might not be working. I don't think it's working as people think. Like it is working, but like on a personal level. Like I'm staking on projects, they are getting rewards. Like let's say if like ComChat, for instance, like they would basically be like, oh, like I'm staking on that on their key, and I don't know what the fuck they're doing with like their votes, right? They could be voting for like a bunch of themselves, but like but they're building something in return of me staking them. So I'm trying to basically create this economy where it's like you can stake on anyone, or anyone can stake, and you're essentially voting for inflation. And so, but what happens when that goes down? Because it's going down, right? They're kind of like exponential decaying curves, especially after having like we're obviously earlier, so we have a pretty decent APR.
When is your first halving?
It's 2025. December. I think it's 2026. It's going to be 2 years from now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when is Bittensor's first happening? Do you know?
I think it's around about the same time. I think.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But they're actually, I think they're hitting, which is, I'm not sure how they did their, because it's like both of us, like for us, it was really like kind of like, you know, like I'm like a hacky kind of dude. So it's like, it was like, go, like, you know, let's just run and like see how this goes. And then we were like, okay, this doesn't work. You know, I'm honestly going to say it's really stressful and we've kind of stabilized it. Like we have a solid team now. But
how many of there are you actually? Because I've heard different things.
Okay. Probably
like roughly.
Probably like 20 to 20.
Oh, really?
30 people.
Are they all developers? I would assume so at this point.
Yeah, I'm basically like talking to like a lot of them. And like a lot of them just come to me and be like, "Yo, can I do this?" And so like each project, I'll do like around 2K a week for that project. And so like
do 2K. What does that mean?
Oh, sorry, 2,000 like US dollars, like a bounty. And like
I see. Okay, so that's how people get paid. So they get paid per gig, basically.
Yeah, it's a mix of like it's whatever people want to like they'll come like initially like I'm not gonna like go like, oh, like, hey, do you want to try this new like staking reward thing? No. But people don't know about it because they're like, hey, like more and more people are asking for and I'm like, okay, well, like instead of me staking on like maybe these bullshit valid like modules or whatever, like I don't know, like I don't want to put too much of my stake onto validators that I'm like like just improving, and like some of them I'm not too happy with, and that's been something I've been really like trying to improve. But it's fun. It's people are, I think, if you like, I'm just thinking of how to incentivize like good validators is like an important thing on a general network. Mm-hmm. And so I think ultimately what it's gonna like what the final product is, what we're striving for is like the validator is going to be with the application. So whatever the person uses, it basically votes for the usage of that application. So
it votes for the usage. So you are addressing the usage concern that I have in some way.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I didn't want to say it like too kind of like, out there because I wanted to be surprised. But yeah, basically.
Oh, so okay. So this is you're making an announcement. Is that what's happening right now?
Well, no. I've been hinting.
I don't want to force you to do anything you don't want to do.
Yeah, I would hint at like, oh guys, like we're building this like thing, and it's going to be a social validator where like users will choose what they build. Like they're basically going to like choose what they use, or they're going to click on something. It's going to like they're going to use it. It could be whatever, right? It could be like a model. It could be stock predictions. Who cares, right? It's like it could be a smart contract, but like and then it will essentially track whose module that is, and then it will like basically, oh, like this module is used a lot, or this module is popular, and let me stake for that, because the stake will essentially determine how much you can call on a module. The more you stake me, the more emissions I get, the more energy I can spend and costs I can do to serve your requests. That's essentially the logic.
Wait. Let me understand this. Yeah. So basically, the modules are constrained in terms of how many times they can be called based on the amount that they've staked. So at a certain point, the lights go out. Like if I haven't staked enough, more or less.
Well, yeah. Like essentially, like right now, the way it works is the more you stake on a module, the more calls you have per minute. That's kind of how it works. And so
so it's simultaneous users. It's capacity of simultaneous users.
Yeah. So because when I'm exposing it, and let's say if it's calling an OpenAI endpoint, and if someone's just like, let's say if it was free, it could be free. But if it was free, someone's literally you're giving people free access to your credit card through spending OpenAI keys. not
right. But I mean, some people, to be fair, in the Bittensor network, I've discovered that there are people who are running subnets that are just pulling or just pushing the requests over to OpenAI and then giving the answer back, right? And what they're doing, and they're paying OpenAI's API key fees, but they're arbitraging the amount of tau rewards that they're getting, and that's more, right? So and you can play that game, but it's valid, as long as you're supplying AI. They don't really care how you're doing it, but it isn't very like in the long run that's not sustainable. So I don't like that, just sort of from a purity standpoint of sustainability, mm-hmm. But it is capitalism though, so I can't fault it there.
Yeah, well, it's like it's regardless of whether. So I think this is another like thing I'm still questioning is like, okay, do users care about decentralization, or what's better? Like, why are we creating Web3? I don't think it's because of decentralization. I think we need decentralization to ensure we have more fair systems. So I think the fundamental thing we're trying to achieve, irrespective of like this terminology of Web 2, Web 3, is just, is this system fair or is this fair? And like, I think we felt that, okay, things aren't really fair in the Web 2 world. And I don't know if decentralization solves fairness either, because I think it's like, well, maybe true decentralization might, but at least like the forms now, like there's a lot of ego involved, and like people are, might control something. And if you try to take it away, it's like, they might.
Well, I think you make a good point, because I think Solana is not decentralized. It's a database cosplaying as a blockchain, right? Mm-hmm. And it turns out that doesn't matter because people just want speed and they want NFTs. Right. Yeah. And right. That's really what they care about. Right. And the illusion of decentralization. So it doesn't actually have to really be decentralized. I think Solana has fairly proven that point.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that Solana is a good example. Yeah. You bring up a good point. Like, how it's like essentially trying to like, yeah, it's centralized, but like they're just more scalable, and like people, like it's just more user friendly. To not have to wait 5 seconds. I don't know. It's not that bad. Like Visa's 2 seconds, so it's like
Yeah, but Solana's going to be screaming fast, apparently by like 1 million transactions per second by this summer. Now we don't know whether that's vaporware or not, but that is what they have said. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, and we're actually thinking maybe like because Polkadot's consensus is kind of like, I don't know. It's like it's off the shelf, so it's like not perfect. It's not bad. But we're thinking of doing like there's better consensus mechanisms that will come out that will allow us to essentially migrate like our chain to like something that's like much faster. And
yeah, I mean, the speed doesn't really matter on your chain, I don't think, because it's just there for emissions at the moment. Are people going to ever have to pay? I guess they do pay. I guess I was going to say, do users ever have to pay CommuneAI in order to access the modules? And I guess the answer is no, because the modules pay to allow access. So that's where the toll booth is.
Yeah. Dude, this gets really like philosophical, like, but it's like I guess it's like I want to think of it more like a funding, like just from the recent things I've done where I would stake people and like it would give them emissions, and then they would like it would support a team of developers for a project. Like with like a few 100,000 tokens, you can support like a few people, which is crazy because like we have like, let's say 80 million right now in circulation. So if everyone was like using those tokens, like this is the goal right now, is like, how do we get... Sorry,
to clarify, 80 million tokens or $80 million worth of tokens?
80 million tokens in circulation.
Okay.
Like, yeah. And so like imagine if all the validators or all the people that had like those tokens just like spread it out for like doing like 500,000, staking $500,000 projects. That's running like probably how many? Like that's probably like 150 projects we can do it at the same time if we fully utilize that. Now, obviously, that's in a perfect system, and so the next best thing is just getting 5 and 10% of that, which is like 20 projects, which is insane.
Right.
And I think right now we're at like 5 to 10 consecutive projects that are happening. We have like a smart contract store where it's like,
let's talk about like what people are doing. I actually want to make sure we get that. So what are some of the cooler modules and projects that have been built or are in the process of being built right now?
Yeah. So there's a lot of off the shelf stuff. So there's already like, you can store whatever you want encrypted, locally or like remotely. That one, we're creating a front end for that.
So storage. So basically Filecoin, some variation on that. Okay.
Yeah. So, and we'll connect it with Filecoin as well. But yeah, no, essentially like we want you like to store and like encrypt and like also store encrypted stuff, but also like you can like, let's say if you have like a really like important password and you don't want to keep it on you. And so, but you don't want to store it on someone's thing, because if they break, it's like, so what you do is you just break it into like a bunch of little pieces and you encrypt those, each piece, and then you replicate those separately. So you can have a secure way of like storing like sensitive information. and then also not have to like put it in like your USB. And so that's one thing I'm really like, that's obviously in the works, and we should probably see something in terms of the front end for that. I like, maybe later this week or next week, because I've been like building that for a bit, but that's one project that was happening.
So basically like encrypted, fractured key storage. So, the real world analogy would be like, okay, I'm going to take the key, I'm going to put one part of it inside the Maltese Falcon. I'm going to put another part of it, like, hidden in the Rock of Gibraltar, right? Like it's like that. So
basically,
but digitally.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, it's like, and you encrypt it on your own side, you encrypt it on the client. So it's like, if you can do it however you want, right? Like, I think giving users the ability, I just want people to think like the idea is to make this more like gamified, where it's like you kind of have like these visual kind of like things where you have like these blobs as a module, and then you like, okay, I'll click the storage blob, and then it goes into like the storage, and you're like, okay, like, what can I do here? I want that experience where it's like kind of like a browser for applications. And each application, like essentially each module is
for Commune, basically like a browser for Commune applications, like a portal of Commune applications.
Well, it's so not just Commune, like every application. Like
every application,
like
on the internet.
Well, that's the long-term goal. Yes. Because AI will be so powerful that we can like essentially create these portals between like people can stream. Like we're still figuring that out too, but it is possible to essentially have people sign in to other people's accounts and then stream that account through a module. So essentially, like it's giving people the access of hackers essentially. And so we're trying to make that simple and more simple, and it's hard to do that. But like basically, like, if we just simplify this, like people don't really understand encryption or decryption or like, signing something. They don't really understand cryptography. Now, like, that's just a simple thing that we can focus on as well, of like, how do you like allow like people to just like sign and like send things? And like, can you have like, let's say a we really like connecting things. So like one thing we haven't started working on yet, but I want to basically create a multi-chat interface where you can like basically have all your conversations from Facebook, Instagram, like it just connects all of your like social media. I'm sure it exists. But like essentially an open source version of that would be really cool. And so that's like, we had to do that, but what's working right now, or what we're building right now is, we have like Discord bot that we essentially can do like multimodal, like, you can like do text to image, text to text, text to video.
And is that a module?
Yeah, that's a module running on Discord. And we're going to do one on Twitter. We're going to do one for Telegram. We have like, these like smart contract store where we want to like, basically you sign into MetaMask and then we'll just like basically list all the smart contracts on the EVM chain. So we can like basically parse the EVM, like do all the popular smart contracts, and then kind of like have like a UI for like basically like an app store. And then maybe we'll have like some DeFi modularity with that. Because like right now we have separate stores of like, we have like a smart contract store, a module store. We have an agent store that we're building. But ideally we want to keep them, we want to put them all into one store because they're all just a bunch of cards. And you can think of it like a module, like a trading card where it has like a bunch of functions. I think the best like analogy though is a smart contract. Like think of what a smart contract is on Ethereum, but that's on chain. In this case, the module isn't really on chain. It's like hosted somewhere. So that doesn't have the rigidity of the smart contract. And obviously, yeah, the smart contract has its advantages, but obviously one of the downsides is you can't run an AI model on it. So
yeah, like I said, it's the composability of DeFi, but applied to the internet. Right?
Essentially, yeah.
That's effectively what you've done, right? Which is kind of a cool vision, actually. I really like. There is a lot about this I really like, and that is definitely one of the things that I dig. So well done on that thought for sure. Yeah. So okay, so let's talk a little bit about you versus the man. So you were, so basically you were expressing reticence about taking venture funding. So you and you're sort of like in having an internal tug of war. So what is, are you, I guess you haven't taken any venture funding yet, or you have, or you're thinking about it?
It's
and
been
you
very
don't want to, or you do,
No,
or
I do want to. I'm trying to resist. But no. Initially I was like against it because of, I'm kind of like a hippie kind of dude. I'm like, okay, yeah, fuck these.
no,
fuck
really, seriously.
You literally, you see Berkeley right here.
Yeah, no, I did catch that. Yeah, we're good.
But no, honestly, like I was concerned that like the interests like of my interests, it was also my naivety too of like, this is my first kind of like venture like coming out of like working, and so I was like, oh, if I get money, then it's like, it's gonna like taint the vision. But I was also like trying to like talk to like investors as well, because I was open to it as well. Like I wasn't like fully closed off to it. It's just that I guess the way I communicate was not like didn't get across, and they were like different. Like
I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah. So and there was like I think the first like minor investment was like 15K, and like my God, they got such a fucking deal on that. Like it was, I don't know, like I was so naive and like just like starting all this and like, and I kind of I felt that like I needed to create some like incentive layer for like a general network, because getting people to just like run stuff for free is hard. And I've seen that in practice. Like, I'm not sure if this is a known fact, but like HiveMind had inspired the creation in part of Bittensor. And they helped Bittensor in the early phases, but we don't know about HiveMind, do we? It's like they still exist. I'm not trying to bash on HiveMind. I think they're actually really, like they're more academic focused, and I kind of like, there's something that like clicked with me when I'm like, okay, like if I want to like make change, I need to like somehow incentivize this, like, to happen like through a cryptocurrency. And like, I was always like a crypto person ever since like the Reddit thing, that kind of inspired me of like, oh, whoa, like, the masses are kind of like,
right. Once Reddit did a crypto, it was suddenly okay.
So that inspired me with Commune actually. And that's when I started, like, I realized like, shit, we need to like create these like social ML networks and like, and yeah, but I'm open to VC. Like I actually have like, some like deals pending that I can like execute now. I'm just in the process of like, thinking about it. Like people have made offers. Like, I don't know. I'm
okay. So you've got offers. You're considering it. You're not sure if you want to do it. Understand.
Yeah. Like we don't like need it like right now. Like I'm honest. Like I'm pretty frugal in how I spend, which so it's like I kind of like yeah. I've started like when I quit, I was like, man, like I operated like a business where I was like, okay, I'm gonna spend like this much, and then like I have this much, and like this is how far I'll burn into. Yeah. So it's like, I'm pretty good at spending, and I think, we could like, we don't sell too much all at once. We sell little by little, just to pay off like most of like just to pay off like the developers, and then we'll have like a chest for like, just in case something happens in the market, because you never know with these times. But like, yeah, like the way I think of it is like, yeah, I'm just building, like all of this is just like stuff for me to just build. This is a life thing for me. So, well,
I mean, look, I've done venture funding in the past. I've raised money from SoftBank and Intel and worked for a company that was backed by Sequoia. So I've seen it up close for a while. It's a two-edged blade. I mean, there's things about it that are absolutely great, and there are things that are not great. Right. And, it's, but no matter what, there's going to be problems. So you just have to decide which class of problem is more acceptable to you. Right. So I think one of the things that's great about the Bittensor universe is, they've got Barry Silbert as one of the big, validators, I believe, and he's a validator of Tau. Right. So just having that sort of name, and he's got a little Tau T in his, in his Twitter feed, right. Or X feed. And there's another guy, spacing his name, Jax, I think is his last name. He's putting in 25 million into the Tau ecosystem. He's just funding, people who are doing subnets and things around Tau. TauFi, right? Like liquid stake Tau kinds of things, right? I don't know if he's funding that specifically, but an example of something he probably would consider, right? So that ecosystem, having people throw money into the ecosystem, not only just you, that actually it can be the difference between something living or dying, and it's the difference between the MySpace and the Facebook, right? So, sometimes you have to dance with the devil in order to get to the promised land. You just do, right? So it seems counterintuitive, but that's what happens, right? So,
I don't think you're wrong. I think definitely having that attracts people like en masse, and yeah, like I mentioned the hive mind thing because I'm like, okay, like you can stay true to the cause, but it's like I'm like, I don't know, like I'm trying to be practical. So no, like we're totally open for it. But I think we're going at a pretty steady pace too, because like we're spending like $20K a week on bounties, and that's not even including like all the emissions we're doing with projects. So like I think our goal is to like expand the number of parallel projects more through like our staking like mechanism. And I think we can like probably support maybe like 30 to 40 projects at once. And I think like we have like basically like 100 over like 200 modules in our repo, and a lot of them aren't even deployed. And so the reason is because like, I guess I've been working a lot on the protocol and stuff, but I think we're going to see a lot of new stuff. And I think that's going to help. That's only going to be like possible for like in Dopey, if like you have a Dopey front end.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, but I do think I know what you're saying. Like you're kind of like saying like, oh, like there's like you have to have like, capital that attracts attention. People kind of like flood in through that capital injection. Yeah.
They just do. It's just what humans do, right? So listen, Sal, we're like up on the hour here, so I'm going to have to cut this short. But before we go, what do you want to plug? Where can people find you online? What are your websites and Twitter handles and all that?
Yeah, so it's like communeai.org, like all spelt as is. That's our Twitter, and then we'll have like our Discord link and GitHub bio in the Twitter. So like that'll take you to everything you need to know about us.
Okay, very good. Well, Sal, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for sharing your vision for Commune. My name is Mark Jeffrey. That's it for this time. We'll see you all next time.
Take care.